The warning echoed in her mind like a haunting melody. She ignored the human's advice, so now she's paying the painful price. Commander Derek Frost stared at the endless field of stars through the transport's main window, his jaw clenched tight with frustration. This wasn't what he'd signed up for when he joined the military. He'd dreamed of epic space battles, heroic missions, and making a real difference in the galaxy. Instead, here he was, stuck piloting a boring Class 4 transport ship across the lonely Vega sector, babysitting the most annoying passenger he'd ever met. The military recruiters had painted such bright pictures after the brutal Relian conflict ended. They'd promised him action, adventure, and a chance to serve with purpose. What did they give him instead? A simple escort mission, taking a spoiled alien diplomat's daughter to the remote desert world of Araxis. It felt like punishment rather than duty. How much longer until we get there? Kira Telani asked for what felt like the 100th time that day. Her orange-tinted skin seemed to glow with impatience under the ship's bright white lights. Her beautiful silver hair fell like liquid metal down her shoulders as she leaned over his pilot's chair, getting way too close to his personal space. The scent that followed her everywhere, like exotic flowers mixed with rare spices, filled his nostrils and made it hard to concentrate. Derek's muscular frame tensed beneath his tight-fitting grey combat suit. He gripped the controls tighter and spoke through gritted teeth. "Still 6 hours," he replied, his voice strained with barely controlled irritation. "Just like when you asked me 5 minutes ago. And 10 minutes before that." Kira let out a dramatic huff, her full lips forming a perfect pout that probably worked on every male in the galaxy. "This transport ship is so old and slow," she complained, waving her hand dismissively. "My father's personal shuttle could make this exact same journey in half the time. Maybe even less." Derek muttered under his breath, his eyes focused on the navigation console's blinking lights. "Then you should have taken Daddy's fancy shuttle instead." Her amber eyes narrowed dangerously, like a predator spotting prey. "What did you just say to me?" Derek straightened his posture immediately, his military training kicking in despite his growing irritation. "Nothing, Lady Telani," he said formally, though his tone carried an edge. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in the passenger quarters. I've heard the entertainment system is perfectly adequate for long journeys." Kira let out a laugh that sounded like beautiful wind chimes, but somehow managed to be both lovely and insulting at the same time. "I've already watched everything in your pathetic collection of human media," she said with a dismissive wave. "Your species has such primitive tastes in entertainment. So boring and predictable." Derek bit his tongue hard to keep from saying something he'd regret. 3 more days of this assignment, he told himself. Then he'd be back to real military work. Real missions that mattered. He could endure this. After all, he'd survived being blown into the vacuum of space for 90 terrifying seconds during the fierce battle of Proxima Centauri. Surely he could survive one entitled alien princess. Suddenly, an alarm began blaring throughout the cockpit. Red warning lights flashed across every control panel like angry eyes. Derek's extensive training kicked in instantly, and his hands flew across the controls with practiced precision. "What's happening?" Kira demanded, her usual arrogance quickly replaced by genuine fear and concern. Her voice had lost its mocking tone. "Engine malfunction," Derek replied, his voice remaining calm and professional despite the chaos erupting around them. "We're losing power to the main thrusters fast. We need to make an emergency landing immediately." "On that planet?" Kira pointed at the view screen, which showed Araxis growing larger as they approached. But they were coming in far too fast, and at completely the wrong angle. Derek's hands moved quickly over the emergency controls. Better than floating dead in space. He sighed grimly. He engaged all the emergency protocols, and the ship began shuddering violently as it entered the planet's atmosphere. "Strap yourself in right now," Derek commanded. For once in her life, Kira didn't argue or complain. She quickly slid into the co-pilot seat and secured the safety harness as Derek fought desperately to control their rapid descent. The ship groaned and creaked in protest like a wounded animal. External temperature readings climbed dangerously high on all the monitors. "We're coming in way too hot," Derek announced, his strong hands steady on the controls despite the ship shaking violently. Around them, "Brace yourself for impact." The transport hit the desert surface hard, skidding and bouncing across the rough terrain. It kicked up massive clouds of reddish dust that blocked out the sun. Metal screamed against stone as sparks flew everywhere. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the ship came to rest at an awkward angle against a huge rock formation. Derek immediately ran a quick systems check, his trained eyes scanning every readout. "Life support is still intact," he reported, with relief. "Hull integrity is at 68%. Communications are damaged but repairable." He unbuckled his harness and stood up, his imposing height filling the cramped cockpit. Could have been much worse. Kira unstrapped herself and smoothed down her light grey top, then adjusted her tight-fitting shorts. "So we're stranded here?" she asked, trying to sound casual but failing to hide her worry. "Temporarily," Derek corrected, grabbing an emergency kit from beneath the console. "We're actually not far from the capital city. Maybe a 2-day journey on foot if we're lucky. I can repair the emergency beacon, but it might take some time for rescue to arrive." He pulled out 2 bulky environmental suits and tossed one too. "Kira, put this on immediately," he ordered. Kira caught the suit but immediately wrinkled her nose in disgust. "This thing is absolutely hideous," she complained. "And it smells like human sweat. Gross." "It's completely clean," Derek assured her, already pulling his own suit over his combat gear. "And it will keep you alive out there. Araxis might look like a standard desert planet, but it's home to some of the most dangerous plants in this entire sector. Those cacti you'll see have spines that can pierce right through standard body armor." Kira tossed the suit aside with a dismissive flick of her wrist. "I'm not wearing that horrible thing," she declared stubbornly. "My skin is very sensitive to synthetic fabrics. Besides, we're just going outside to look at the damage, right?" Derek sighed heavily and ran a hand through his light brown hair. "Your funeral, princess," he said with resignation. "Don't say I didn't warn you. I'll just be a minute," Kira announced confidently, walking toward the ship's exit hatch. "I want to feel real sunlight on my skin after being trapped in this metal box for days." Derek watched her go with growing frustration. He had to admit, the tight-fitting shorts she wore showed off her curves in ways that were very difficult to ignore. But her incredible stubbornness was quickly overshadowing any attraction he might have felt toward her. "Last chance," he warned, holding up the protective suit. "Those cacti aren't just pretty decorations. They're evolutionary killing machines that have survived for millions of years." Kira rolled her eyes dramatically. "My species evolved on a world far harsher than this little dust ball," she said proudly. "We're naturally resilient to most toxins and poisons. We don't need your primitive protection." "Your funeral," Derek muttered again, securing his own helmet. The hatch opened with a loud hiss, releasing a blast of hot, dry air that hit them like a wall. Kira stepped out confidently, her beautiful silver hair gleaming brilliantly in the harsh sunlight of Araxis's twin stars. Derek followed closely behind, his trained eyes constantly scanning their surroundings through his helmet's protective visor. The ship had carved a deep, ugly furrow in the red sand, finally coming to rest in a small clearing. All around them stood clusters of tall, blue-tinged cacti. Their spines glinted menacingly in the bright sunlight, some nearly 30 centimeters long and as sharp as surgical needles. See? Kira gestured around them with a confident smile. Perfectly safe. You humans are so paranoid and... Her words were cut off by a piercing scream as she backed directly into a cluster of needle cacti. The deadly spines penetrated her clothing with ease, embedding themselves deep in the soft flesh of her thighs and buttocks. Don't move, Derek commanded, rushing to her side. Every single movement drives them deeper into your flesh. Tears welled up in Kira's amber eyes as she froze in place, her whole body trembling with pain. It burns so much, she gasped. Please, get them out of me. Derek carefully guided her away from the dangerous cacti, supporting her weight as her legs began to shake uncontrollably. I warned you, he said, his voice mixing concern with frustration. Let's get you back inside where I can help you. Once back in the ship, he gently laid her face down on the medical cot. I need to remove those spines immediately, he explained. The neurotoxin spreads quickly through the bloodstream. Just do it, she hissed through clenched teeth, her hands gripping the sides of the cot. Derek retrieved the medical kit and carefully cut away the fabric around the embedded spines. He tried hard to maintain clinical detachment as he exposed the orange-tinted skin of her lower body, now marked by dozens of blue spines. This is going to hurt, he warned, applying a topical anesthetic spray to numb the area. It already hurts. Terribly, she replied, her voice strained with pain. Her complaint dissolved into a sharp gasp as he extracted the first spine with medical tweezers. Stay as still as you can, he instructed, his voice becoming gentler. The more you move around, the more the toxin spreads through your system. For the next 20 long minutes, Derek worked methodically and carefully, removing spine after spine. Kira's constant complaints gradually faded, replaced by occasional soft whimpers that stirred something unexpectedly protective in him, despite his earlier irritation. Almost done, he assured her, but he noticed with growing concern that her orange skin was developing a worrying bluish tinge around each puncture site. Her breathing had become shallow and labored, and her body trembled beneath his gentle hands. I feel so strange, she murmured, her voice starting to slur. Cold but hot at the same time. Derek quickly scanned her with the medical scanner, and his heart sank. Damn it, he muttered. The toxin is spreading faster than I expected. He immediately administered a broad-spectrum antitoxin, knowing it might not be specific enough for Araxis cactivenom. Stay with me, Kira, he urged, carefully turning her onto her back. Her eyes were unfocused, pupils dilated wide. Talk to me. Tell me about your home world. Everything's so bright here, she whispered weakly, reaching up to touch his face. Her fingers traced his jawline with unexpected tenderness. You're not terrible for a human. Despite the serious situation, Derek felt a smile tug at his lips. High praise from Her Highness. Not a princess, she mumbled, her words becoming unclear. Just have an important father. Her hand fell away as her eyes fluttered closed. The medical scanner showed her vital signs weakening rapidly. No, 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 Derek muttered, administering another dose of antitoxin. Don't you dare die. On my watch. He quickly activated the ship's emergency medical protocols, which recommended immediate treatment with a specific antivenom, available only at medical settlements or facilities. Derek made a crucial decision. He couldn't wait for rescue that might never come. The nearest settlement was a full day's journey on foot, but there was a small trading post marked on his maps just a few hours away. He carefully lifted Kira's unconscious form, surprised at how light she felt in his strong arms. Her silver hair spilled over his armored forearm, and her head rested against his chest. Even in this dangerous state, there was something undeniably beautiful about her. "You just had to be stubborn," he said softly, securing her in the co-pilot's seat. He quickly programmed the ship to broadcast a distress signal, then packed essential supplies and the portable medical kit. As he prepared to leave, Kira stirred. Slightly, her eyes opened halfway, glassy with fever. "Derek," she murmured, using his first name for the very first time. "I'm here," he replied, checking her pulse. It was rapid but steady. "Don't leave me," she whispered weakly. Her hand grasping his dot, something shifted deep in Derek's chest. A protective instinct he hadn't felt since losing his squad in the terrible Relian conflict. "I'm not leaving you," he promised firmly. "But I need to get help. The antivenom is our only option now." She nodded faintly, her fingers intertwining with his. "You're so warm," she observed, a strange note in her voice. "Humans run hot," he replied, concerned by the flush spreading across her orange skin. "And you're burning up with fever." "I've always found humans fascinating," she continued, her words drifting. "So resilient, so passionate about everything." Derek gently pulled his hand free, attributing her unusual honesty to the toxin's effects on her mind. "Save your strength," he said kindly. "I'll be back with help before you know it." As he prepared to leave, he couldn't help but notice how vulnerable and small she looked lying there. So different from the haughty diplomat's daughter who had boarded his ship. Perhaps there was much more to Kira Talani than he'd initially thought. Meanwhile, Kira floated in a strange sea of blue light, her consciousness drifting somewhere between reality and wild hallucination. The powerful neurotoxin coursing through her system had transformed her perception, breaking down the carefully constructed walls of her mind. "Father," she called out, seeing the stern face of Ambassador Talani appear before her. "I failed. You again, haven't I?" The ghostly figure shook its head with disappointment. "Always disappointing us. Never measuring up to your brother's achievements. What use is a daughter who cannot even follow simple instructions?" Tears streamed down Kira's flushed face as the hallucination shifted and changed. Now she stood before the intimidating Talani Council, their judgmental gazes boring into her soul. "Unworthy of your bloodline," they chanted in perfect unison. "Forever trying to prove yourself, always falling short." "No," she whispered, her dream self sinking to her knees. "I am worthy. I am strong." The council chamber dissolved like smoke, replaced by the familiar interior of Derek's ship. But this version was bathed in warm, golden light. And there was Derek, standing before her without his bulky armor, his human form radiating a strength that called to something primal deep within. "Her. You don't have to prove anything to me," Dream Derek said, his voice deeper and more resonant than in reality. "I see you, Kyra, not the ambassador's daughter, just you." The hallucination Derek approached her slowly, and Kira felt her body respond, with an intensity that completely shocked her. In her strict culture, attraction was a clinical thing. Partnerships carefully arranged for genetic optimization and political advantage. What she felt now was raw, untamed, a hunger she'd never experienced before. "Humans," she murmured as Dream Derek's hand gently caressed her face. "So primitive in your passions. So beautifully free. Is that what you want?" he asked softly. "Freedom? I don't know what I want," she admitted, a truth she'd never voiced aloud in her waking life. The scene shifted again like a movie. Now she was running across the desert. Derek beside her, both of them laughing joyfully as they escaped some unseen pursuer. The happiness she felt was absolutely intoxicating. This isn't real, she told herself, even as her dream self reached for Derek's strong hand. Does it matter? Dream Derek replied with a knowing smile. Sometimes the unreal shows us what we truly desire. Kira's fever dreams continued cycling through different scenarios. Some terrifying, others tender and sweet. Through them all, Derek remained a constant, comforting presence, protecting her, challenging her, seeing her in ways no one in her privileged life ever had. In one particularly vivid hallucination, she stood bravely before her father, Derek, at her side. "I choose him," she declared boldly. "Not the mate you've selected for political reasons, him." Her father's face twisted with rage. "A human? You would disgrace our ancient lineage for a primitive species." "They're not primitive," she countered with passion. "They feel everything we've taught ourselves to suppress. They embrace life instead of just analyzing it. They're magnificent." The hallucination shattered like glass, and Kira found herself back on the medical cot, alone in the quiet ship. Her body still burned with fever, but something else burned within her too. A realization that had been building since she first met the frustrating, captivating human commander. "Derek," she whispered to the empty ship, "please come back to me." Meanwhile, Derek pushed himself hard across the harsh desert terrain. The portable medical scanner strapped to his wrist kept beeping with Kira's increasingly erratic vital signs. The trading post was still an hour away, and the life-saving antivenom with it. "Hang on," he muttered as if she could somehow hear him across the distance. "Just hang on a little longer." His communication device crackled with an automated message from the ship's AI. "Warning. Patient exhibiting elevated hormonal activity consistent with Talani reproductive cycle. Possible toxin interaction detected." Derek frowned, his pace never slowing. He knew the basic facts of Talani physiology from his mandatory military briefings. Their reproductive biology was typically completely dormant until activated by very specific biochemical triggers. Could the cactus venom have somehow triggered something unexpected? He increased his pace even more, ignoring the burning sensation in his lungs as Araxis's thin atmosphere taxed his endurance. The twin suns beat down mercilessly on his protective suit. But the thought of Kira lying alone and suffering drove him forward with determination. When he finally reached the small trading post, little more than a collection of prefabricated structures huddled against a towering rock formation, he wasted no time in locating the medical supplier. "Araxis cactus antivenom," he demanded urgently, slapping his military ID down on the counter. "Emergency situation. Life or death." The trader, a grizzled old human with skin weathered by years under the desert suns, raised a curious eyebrow. "Military, huh? What's the Terran Alliance doing way out in this forgotten backwater?" "Private transport mission," Derek replied curtly, his patience wearing thin. "The antivenom, now." The trader shrugged and retrieved a small vial of iridescent liquid from a secure cabinet. "This will neutralize the neurotoxin completely," he explained. "But any secondary effects are on their own timeline." "Secondary effects?" Derek asked, concerned. "Depends on the species," the trader explained casually. "In some, there's a powerful hormonal response, especially in females of compatible humanoid species. Makes them more receptive, if you catch my meaning." Derek's eyes widened as the implications hit him. He grabbed the antivenom and several backup vials, then raced back across the desert toward his ship and the woman waiting for him. He gave Derek a knowing look. Tanny, by any chance Derek's expression must have confirmed it, because the traitor chuckled. "Thought so, you might want this too." He slid a second vial across the counter-hormone stabilizer. Unless you want to deal with a tanny and full reproductive heat. They're quite intense. Derek hesitated, then took both vials. How much are for the Alliance? No charge, just remember Outpost 37. Next time your superiors are distributing supplicum tracts. With a nod of thanks, Derek sprinted back toward the ship, the precious antivenin securing his pack. The medical scanner showed Kira's condition stabilizing, but her hormonal readings were spiking in patterns he'd never seen as he approached the ship. A new sense of urgency filled him, not just to administer the antivenin, but to see her again. The realization caught him off guard. When had the annoying diplomat's daughter become someone he genuinely cared about? Derek burst into the ship, antivenin clutched tightly in his hand. The sight that greeted him made his breath catch. Kira, writhing on the medical cot, her silver hair plastered to her forehead with sweat, her orange skin flushed with an almost luminescent quality. Derek, she gasped, her eyes flying open. You came back? Of course I did, he replied, quickly preparing the anthin injection. I said I would. Her hand caught his wrist with surprising strength. You were in my dreams. Derek felt heat rise to his face but maintained his professional demeanor. The toxin causes hallucinations. Hold still, this will help. He administered the antivenin, watching with relief as the medical scanner showed the neurotoxin levels beginning to drop almost immediately. Kira's breathing steadied, and the pained expression on her face eased. Better? He asked, brushing damp silver strands from her forehead. That pain is receding, she confirmed, but then shifted uncomfortably. But I feel a strange hot, like my skin is too tight. Derek hesitated, then produced the second vial. The traitor said this might happen. The toxin can trigger hormonal response in tanny physiology. This will stabilize you. Kira's eyes widened with recognition. Is that a hormone suppressant? Yes, it should counteract the no. She pushed his hand away firmly. I cannot take that. Derek frowned. Kirawa experiencing a biochemical reaction to the toxin. This will help. You don't understand, she said, sitting up despite her weakness. In Talani culture, the reproductive cycle is sacred. To artificially suppress it would be sacrilegious. Our body's natural rhythms are considered the voice of our ancestors. Even when triggered by alien cactus venom, Derek asked skeptically. A small smile played at her lips. The cause doesn't matter. Once begun, the cycle must complete naturally. Derek ran a hand through his hair, exasperated. And what exactly does this cycle entail? Kira's amber eyes met his, a new boldness in them. Increased body temperature, sensory awareness, intense desire. She said the last word with a deliberate emphasis that made Derek's collar suddenly feel too tight. I see, Hesed, trying to maintain his composure. And how long does this cycle last typically? 3 to 5 days, though in this case. She glanced at the medical scanner. The toxin may have intensified things. Before Derek could respond, the ship's alarm system blared too. Life warning, class 3 dust storm approaching, estimated arrival 15 minutes. Duration unknown. Derek moved to the cockpit, checking the environmental sensors. The readouts confirmed his fears. A massive wall of swirling red dust was bearing down on their position, powerful enough to scour the paint from the ship's hull. Perfectiming, he muttered, returning to the medical bay. We're about to be hit by a major dust storm. We need to secure everything and power down non-essential systems to conserve energy. Kira attempted to stand but swayed dangerously. Derek caught her by the shoulders, steadying her. The contact sent a visible shiver through her body. Sorry, she whispered, not meeting his eyes. They heightened sensitivity. Derek nodded, maintaining a respectful distance while still supporting her. Can you walk? We should move to the crew quarters. They're better insulated against temperature fluctuations. Together they made their way to the small living area. Derek helped Kira settled onto one of the narrow bunks, then busied himself securing loose items and checking the ship's integrity. "How long will we be trapped?" Kira asked, watching him work these. "Storms can last anywhere from hours to days," Derek replied, sealing the last compartment. "We have enough supplies, but we'll need to be careful with power consumption." The ship shuddered as the first winds hit sand, hissing against the hull like thousands of tiny snakes. Derek dimmed the lights to conserve energy, leaving them in a soft, intimate glow. "So?" he said, sitting on the bunk opposite hers. "Looks like we're stuck here together, just the two of us." Kira's eyes gleamed in the low light. "Just as I was entering a reproductive cycle. Quite the coincidence. Terrible timing." Derek agreed, though his tone suggested otherwise. "In Tani culture," Kira said, drawing her knees up to her chest, "we believe that the universe arranges such coincidences for a reason." Derek raised an eyebrow. "And what reason might that be?" "Perhaps to teach me humility," she suggested with a ruffled smile. "It should have listened to you about the protective suit." "Yes, you should have," Derek agreed, but without malice, though. "I'm starting to think your stubbornness might be one of your more endearing qualities." Kira laughed, a genuine sound without her usual haughtiness. "Humans always finding virtue in flaws. It's what we do best," Derek replied with a grin, "finding the good and the bad, making the best of difficult situations." The ship creaked around Themas. The storm intensified, cocooning them in their own private world. Derek found himself studying Kira's face, the delicate curve of her jaw, the slight point to her ears, the way her silver hair caught the dim light. Without her arrogance as a shield, she was beautiful. "You're staring," she observed, but made no move to turn away. Sorry," he said, not sounding sorry at all. "Just thinking that there's more to you than I initially thought." "And there's more to you than just a military grunt," she countered. "The way you came back for me. Not many would have risked themselves for someone who'd been nothing but Ruble." Derek shrugged. "Humans are stubborn that way too." Outside, the storm howled like a living thing, but inside, a different kind of tension was building, one that had nothing to do with the weather and everything to do with the narrowing space between them. As Kira moved to sit beside him on his bunk, "I think," she said softly, her fingers brushing against his, "that I'm about to pay an entirely different kind of price for ignoring your advice." The temperature inside the ship dropped noticeably as the storm intensified. Derek checked the environmental controls with a frown, powers fluctuating. The sand must be clogging the external solar collectors. Kira hugged herself, shivering despite her elevated body temperature. "How serious is it? If we can't clear the collector soon, we'll lose life support within 12 hours. Derek replied, his military training keeping his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. A sudden flicker of the lights punctuated his assessment, followed by the environmental system shutting down with an ominous whine. "Make that 2 hours," he corrected, already moving toward the maintenance hatch. "I need to reroute power from the auxiliary systems." Kira followed him, her steps more stable now that the anti-venin had taken effect. "I can help. My father insisted I learn basic ship mechanics, and said Chelani should never be completely dependent on others." Derek raised an eyebrow first time. "I've heard you mention your father without sounding resentful." "He's complicated," Kira admitted, kneeling beside Derek as he opened the access panel. "Ambassador Telani expects perfection from his children. My 3 brothers all followed the traditional path. Diplomatic service, arranged marriages to suitable partners, perfect in their lives. And you," Derek handed her a tool, their fingers brushing momentarily Kira's breath caught at the contact under disappointment. "Too emotional too. Curious about other cultures, too unsuitable." She focused intently on the power coupling in front of her. "This trip was supposed to be my last chance to prove myself worthy of the Tani Diplomatic Corps." Derek watched her work with surprising skill by delivering you to an arranged marriage. Her hands stilled. "How did Yauk know?" "Military intelligence briefing. Your father arranged a political alliance with the Araxis governor Sonderix Voice remained neutral, but his jaw tightened. Didn't realize you were being forced into it. Not forced, Kira corrected, resuming her work. It's our way. The needs of Tanyan society outweigh individual desires. She glanced at him. Humans find this concept difficult, I understand, damn. Right, we Doderick muttered, marriage should be about choice, about. He trailed off, suddenly aware of how close they were in the confined space. Another power fluctuation sent the ship into darkness, emergency lights casting everything in a soft red glow. The temperature continued to drop, their breath now visible in small clouds. What about you? Kira asked softly. You carry yourself like someone who's lost something. Derek was silent for a long moment, focusing on reconnecting power conduits. Really, in conflict, I commanded a special operations unit. 12 of the best soldiers in the Alliance. We were ambushed during the routine patrol. His voice grew distant. I was the only survivor. Kira's hand covered his, stopping his work. I'm sorry. I should have seen the sign. Should have protected them better. The admission seemed torn from him. That's why I took this transport assignment. Needed time away from combat decisions. You blame yourself for something beyond your control. Kay observed, just as I blame myself for not being the perfect Talani daughter. Their eyes met in the dim red light, a moment of perfect understanding passing between them. Derek became acutely aware of her proximity, the subtle scent of her skin. The way her silver hair gleamed even in the low light. A violent shudder ran through the ship as a particularly strong gust battered the hull. The temperature plummeted further, and Kira couldn't suppress a shiver despite her elevated body temperature. We need to conserve body heat, Derek said, his training taking over. The emergency blankets in the crew quarters won't be enough alone. Kira nodded, understanding his implication. In Tani culture, sharing body heat is considered an intimate act reserved for family or mates. In human culture, it's called survival. Derek replied, though his quickened pulse suggested otherwise. They finished the temporary power reroute and returned to the crew quarters, where Derek pulled out the emergency thermal blankets. The ship's temperature had dropped to near freezing. And even with his military conditioning, Derek felt the cold seeping into his bones. Kira hesitated only briefly before sitting beside him on the narrow bunk. Your human practicality is admirable, she said, a new note in her voice as she pressed against his side. Derek wrapped the thermal blanket around them, both his arm naturally falling around her shoulders. Her skin was hot to the touch, her Talani physiology, and the toxins' effects creating a stark contrast to the cold air. You're burning up, he observed with concern. The cycle, she explained, her voice a near whisper. It intensifies with proximity to a compatible mate. The implication hung in air between them. Derek found himself studying her face. No longer the haughty diplomat's daughter, but a woman caught between worlds, just as he was caught between his past, whatever future awaited. Is that what I am? He asked softly. Compatible? Kira's amber eyes met his, vulnerability and desire mingling in fair depths. Biologically, Tani can reproduce with humans. It's rare, but not impossible. Culturally, she trailed off. Culturally, I'm beneath your station, Derek finished for her. No, she corrected him firmly. Culturally, you're forbidden, Bess. You represent everything Tani are taught to suppress passion, spontaneity, choosing one's own path. Her hand came to rest on his chest, feeling his heartbeat, the very qualities I've always secretly admired. The ship creaked around them. The storm's howl, a distant backdrop to the tension building. In the small space between them, Derek found himself leaning closer, drawn by something more powerful than the cold or the circumstances. He began, his voice arrow. Your arranged marriage would be impossible, Chefinish Tani, made for life, Derek. Once the bond is formed, it cannot be broken or replaced. The weight of her words hung between them. What had begun as a simple transport mission had become something far more complicated, a choice that would alter both their future irrevocably. I should warn you, Derek said, his hand gently brushing a strand of silver hair from her face. Humans can be stubborn about the people they care about. If we do this, I won't just walk away. When we reach the capital, Kira's lips curved into a smile that transformed her entire face. Then perhaps ignoring your advice about that protective suit wasn't entirely a mistake. As their lips finally met, their ship's systems hummed back to life around them, warmth gradually returning to the cabin that neither of them noticed lost. In a different kind of heat entirely, morning arrived with startling clarity on Araxis. The storm had passed during the night, leaving behind a transformed landscape. Dunes shifted, rock formations exposed, and the ship partially buried in fine red sand. Derek woke first, momentarily disoriented by the weight of Kira curled against him. Silver hair spilled across his chest, hair-arranged tinted skin warm against his. The events of the previous night rushed back, bringing with them a mixture of contentment and concern. He gently extricated himself, careful not to wake her. The ship's systems had stabilized enough, but the diagnostic panel showed significant external damage. They need to make repairs before reacting to reach the capital. Kira stirred, her amber eyes opening slowly. For a moment she simply watched him, a vulnerability in her expression he'd never seen before. No regrets? He asked softly. She stretched, cat-like and graceful. Tanny don't believe in regrets, only in consequences. Her lips curved into a smile. Though I admit the consequences of ignoring your advice about the protective suit have been unexpected. Derek laughed, the sound rich and genuine. That's one way of putting it. He returned to the diagnostic panel, frowning at the readouts. We've got work to do if we want the ship flying again. The main thrusters are clogged with sand, and the communications array needs realignment. Kira joined him, wrapping the thermal blanket around her shoulders. How long a day? Maybe 2. He glanced at her. Which means we'll reach the capital just in time for your arrangement. The unspoken question hung between them. Kira's expression grew serious. I can't go through with it now, she said quietly. Even if we hadn't, Tanner bonding is irreversible. Derek, what happened between us last night formed a connection that can't be undone. Derek felt a weight lift from his shoulders, replaced immediately by a new concern. Your father won't accept that easily, Nosh agreed. He won't. They dressed and began repairs, working side by side under the punishing twin suns. Derek was impressed by Kira's technical knowledge and determination. The spoiled diplomat's daughter was revealing hidden depths with each passing hour. By midday they'd cleared the thrusters and were working on the communications array when Kira suddenly doubled over, a wave of nausea hitting her. Without warning, Derek was at her side instantly, supporting her as she swayed. I'm fine, she insisted, though her orange skin had pulled to an alarming amber hue. Just the heat. Derek guided her back into the ship, concern etched on his features. Let me scan you. The toxin might be having delayed effects. She didn't resist as he ran the medical scanner over her trembling form. The results made his eyes widen. That's impossible, he muttered, running the scan again. What is it, Kira? Asked, her voice small. Derek looked up, his expression a mixture of shock and wonder. According to this, you are pregnant, but it's only been hours since Kira didn't appear, surprised Egmary, placing a hand on her abdomen. Tanny reproductive biology is accelerated compared to humans, especially during a proper cycle, and the toxin may have enhanced the process. She met his gaze steadily. This is why our reproductive cells are considered sacred. They're remarkably efficient. Derek sat evilly beside her, processing the implications. A baby. Our baby. Yes. Kira watched him carefully. In Tanny culture, this would cement our bond beyond any question. No one, not even my father, could interfere. And in human culture, Derek said, slowly taking her hand, means I'm not going anywhere. Relief flooded her features. You're not upset, surprised? Yes. Terrified. Definitely, he smiled, squeezing her hand. But upset? No, somehow this feels some right. Kira's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I never expected to find This with you with any human. My people speak of humans as primitive ruled by emotions rather than logic. Yet, your emotional nature is what draws me to you, and your logical nature is what keeps me grounded. Derek replied, maybe that's the point, we balance each other. They shared a moment of quiet understanding before returning to the practical matters at hand. The pregnancy complete things. Kira would need proper medical care, and they needed to reach the civilization sooner rather than later. By sunset they'd completed the essential repairs. The ship wouldn't win any beauty contests, but it would fly as they prepared for departure. Derek received an incoming transmission, the first since the storm cleared. Commander Frost barked a familiar voice. This is General Harrington. Report your status immediately. Derek exchanged a glance with Kira before responding. Sir, we experienced technical difficulties and were forced to make an emergency landing. Repairs are complete and will resume course to the capital tomorrow morning. Is the Talani ambassador's daughter unharmed? The general demanded. Derek hesitated, looking at Kira. She nodded encouragingly. Lady Tani is well, sir. There were some complications involving local wildlife, but the situation has been resolved. Good Ambassador Tani has been breathing down our necks. Get her to the capital for this damn ceremony, without further incident. That's an order, Commander, sir. About that Derek began. But the general cut him off. No excuses. Frost complete. Your mission, Harrington out. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving an uncomfortable silence. Well, Derek said finally. That complicates things. Kira approached him, determination in her stance. No, it simplifies them. We now have a legitimate reason to refuse the arranged marriage. Tani law is clear. The child's welfare supersedes political arrangements. And if your father doesn't see it that way, her expression hardened, then we'll make him see it. I've spent my life trying to earn his approval. Perhaps it's time I earned my own instead. Derek pulled her close, marveling at the transformation in the woman who had boarded his ship just days ago. I'm starting to think getting stung by Kosekakti was the best thing that ever happened to you, Kira. Laughed, the sound lighter than he'd ever heard from Herium. Paying quite the price for ignoring your advice, Commander Frost. She placed his hand on her abdomen, though. I find I didn't mind the cost. As night fell over the desert, they plotted their course to the capital, and the confrontation that awaited them there. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The stubborn human commander and the Talana diplomat's daughter, who had found something neither of them had been looking for. The gleaming spires over Axe's capital rose from the desert like a mirage, a stark contrast to the harsh landscape surrounding it. Derek guided the ship toward the designated landing pad, his jaw set in determination. Remember the plan, he said to Kira, who sat beside him in the co-pilot's seat. We present a united front. We explained the situation calmly and rationally. Kira nodded, though her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her clothing or more formal outfit she'd found in her luggage, modified to accommodate her still flat stomach. The Talani pregnancy was progressing rapidly. According to the medical scanner, she was already equivalent to several weeks along. And despite it being only a day since conception, my father won't be rational about this, she warned. Tani pride themselves on emotional control, but when it comes to family honor, that control can slip. Derek reached over and squeezed her hand. Then we'll be rational enough for everyone. As they approached the landing pad, the communication system crackled to life. Transport vessel Hermes. This is Arax's control. You are directed to landing pad 7. Security personnel will meet you upon arrival. Derek frowned. Security personnel? That's not standard protocol for a diplomatic transport, my father. Kira said grimly. He suspects something. The ship touched down with a gentle thud. Through the view screen, Derek could see a delegation waiting, a mix of Tani officials in formal robes, Alliance military officers, and a group of elegantly dressed aliens. He assumed with a family of Kira's intended husband at the center stood a Tal imposing Telani male with silver hairstyle with black, his orange skin darker and more weathered than Kira's ambassador. Telani's expression was carved from stone, his amber eyes cold, earthly fixed on the ship. Well, Derek said with forced lightness, at least we don't have to track everyone down. Kira's hand tightened around his. Derek, if they separate us, they won't. Heshed her, though his military experience told him otherwise. But if they do remember, I'll find you no matter what. They shared one last kiss before the hatch opened, exposing them to their scrutiny of the waiting delegation. Derek stepped out first, instinctively positioning himself slightly in front of Kira. He saluted the Alliance officers crisply. Commander Frost reporting mission complete, Sir General Harrington. A barrel-chested man with a perpetual scowl returned the salute. Commander, your report mentions complications. Before Derek could respond, Ambassador Tani stepped forward, his gaze fixed on his daughter. Kira, he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. You are late. The bonding ceremony was scheduled for tomorrow, but no must be delayed for proper preparations. His nostrils flared slightly. You appear unwell. Kira straightened her spine, a new confidence in her bearing that made Derek's chest swell with pride. Father, she acknowledged with a formal bow. There have been developments that make the bonding ceremony impossible. A murmur ran through the assembled group. The ambassador's expression didn't change, but the temperature around him seemed to drop several degrees. Impossible is not a word that Tani recognized. He stated flatly, whatever developments have occurred can be addressed after you fulfill your duty. Derek stepped forward. Sir, with all due respect. Commander Frost. General Harrington interrupted sharply. You will accompany these officers for debriefing. Now 2 Alliance security officers moved to flank Derek. He stood his ground, looking to Kira. I'm not leaving her side, Ambassador. Telani's eyes narrowed dangerously. This is a family matter, human. Your transport duties are complete. He stays with me. Kira declared, her voice ringing with authority that surprised everyone, including her father. By Tanilla, he has that right. The ambassador's composure cracked slightly. What nonsense is this? Kira placed a hand on her abdomen, the gesture unmistakable. In its meaning, I carry his child, father. We are bonded in the most ancient and irreversible way recognized by our laws. Silence that followed was deafening. Ambassador Telani's face cycled through shock, disbelief, and finally cold fury. The family of Kira's intended husband began, whispering urgently among themselves. Impossible, the ambassador finally hissed. You cannot have bonded with a human. The medical scans confirm it. Kira replied steadily. That child grows within me. The bond is formed. General Harrington recovered first, his face purpling with rage. Commander Frost, you were ordered to transport the ambassador's daughter, Noto. To fall in love with her. Derek finished, standing tall with all due respect. Sir, that wasn't covered in my mission parameters. Before anyone could respond, Alliance security officers moved swiftly, separating Derek from Kira. Despite their protests, Derek struggled against their grip. This is against regulations. You can't. Commander Frost is hereby relieved of duty pending investigation into conduct unbecoming an officer. General Harrington announced formally. Take him to headquarters for questioning. Simultaneously, Ambassador Telani gestured to his aides, escort my daughter to our residence. Our physicians will examine her and determine the truth of their claims. Kira fought against the hands that pulled her away from Derek. No, you can't separate us. The bond will be verified. Her father cut her off coldly, and if found valid, addressed accordingly, as they were pulled in opposite directions. Derek caught Kira's desperate gaze. I'll find you, he called out. I promise. The last thing he saw before being forced into a military transport was Ambassador Tani leaning close to his daughter, his expression grave as he spoke words Derek couldn't hear. Hours later, Derek sat in a sterile interrogation room at Alliance headquarters, having repeated his story 3 times to increasingly skeptical officers. his commander's insignia, had been removed, his status reduced to pending review. Let me get this straight. Colonel Mercer said, reviewing the notes, you claim that after Lady Tanny was injured by native flora, she experienced a biochemical reaction that led to a reproductive cycle, which then resulted in relations between you, and now she's carrying a human Tanyan hybrid child. That's exactly what happened. Derek confirmed for the 4th time. And according to Tanny law that makes you suspended for life, the arranged marriage cannot proceed. The colonel sighed heavily. Commander Mr. Frost, do you have any idea of the diplomatic incident you've created? The Telani-Araxis alliance has been in negotiation for years. With all due respect, Sakira is not a bargaining chip. She's a person with rights under both alliance and Tanilal. A knock at the door interrupted. Then a junior officer entered, handing the colonel a data pad. Mercer's eyebrows rose as he read it. Well, he said, finally looking up at Derek with new respect. It seems the Tanny medical examination has confirmed Lady Kira's pregnancy. Ambassador Tanny has requested your immediate release into his custody. Derek's heart leapt. Is Kira all right? According to this, she's freezing all food and medical treatment until she sees you. The colonel's expression softened slightly. You've certainly made an impression, Frost. As Derek was escorted from headquarters, he wondered what awaited him at the ambassador's residence. Would Kira's father accept their bond, or was this summons the prelude to something more sinister? Either way, he was one step closer to reuniting with Kira, and he had no intention of being separated from her again. The ambassador's residence loomed before Derek, its architecture an elegant blend of Talani curves and Araxian angles. Alliance security escorted him to the entrance, where Talani guards with impassive faces took custody of him without a word. Derek was led through corridors adorned with artifacts from a dozen worlds until they reached the grand chamber. Ambassador Talani sat at the head of a long table flanked by Tani elders on one side, and the family of Kira's intended husband on the other. Kira herself stood by a window, her face lighting up when she saw Derek. She moved toward him, but her father's sharp command froze her in place. Remain where you are, daughter. This matter is not yet resolved. Derek straightened his shoulders, meeting the ambassador's cold gaze. With respect, sir, according to Tanillo, it is resolved. Kira carries my child. We are bonded. So the medical scans confirmed. The ambassador conceded reluctantly, however. There are complications. A distinguished Tani male rose from beside Kira's intended husband, an older version of the young man who glared at Derek with undisguised contempt. I am Prefect Valen. He announced my son's marriage to Ambassador Telany's daughter has been arranged for 7 cycles. Contracts were signed, alliances formed. Your interference has cost my family greatly. I understand your position, Derek replied diplomatically, but surely no contract supersedes Talani. Bonding law. The ambassador's expression tightened. The human is correct about our laws, he admitted reluctantly. However, there is matter of compensation. Name your price, Derek said without hesitation. The room fell silent, even Kara looked surprised. At his directness, Ambassador Talani leaned forward. You would pay reparations for Kira and our child, anything. The ambassador exchanged glances with Prefect Valen, then addressed Derek. Human currency is worthless in this matter. That price must be paid. In Tani tradition. Name it, Derek repeated, the right offer, the ambassador declared. An ancient trial to prove a mate's worthiness. Few Talani attempted, no off-worlder ever has. Kira gasped, father, no. The right is dangerous even for those raised in or traditions. It is his right to attempt it, the ambassador countered. If he succeeds, the bond will be recognized, and Prefect Bellen's family compensated from my own holdings if he fails. He left the consequent husband. Derek looked to Kira, who shook her head, minutely fear evident in her eyes. But he had faced worse odds in Therialian conflict. I accept, he stated firmly. The ambassador nodded, seemingly unsurprised. The rite begins at dawn. As the meeting adjourned, Prefect approached Derek, his son. Trailing behind human, he said, his tone neutral, but not hostile. Your willingness to undergo the rite is unexpected. My people have long believed humans lack the discipline for our ways. We're full of surprises, Derek replied evenly. The prefect studied him. Indeed. Perhaps that is why my son's intended chose you. He glanced at his scowling offspring. A lesson in humility for us both, I think. After they departed, Derek was finally permitted to approach Kira. She flew into his arms, her body trembling. You fool, she whispered against his chest. The rite has killed Tani warriors in their prime. Then I'll be the first human to succeed, he assured her, stroking her silver hair. What exactly does this rite entail? Kira pulled back, her expression grave. 3 trials, mind, body, and spirit. But there's something else you should know. She placed his hand on her abdomen, which now showed a slight swell. Our child is special. How Ambassador Tanyan's word approaching silently. Human Tanyan offspring are exceedingly rare, Commander Frost. The few recorded cases in our history produce children with unique abilities, enhanced intuition, isolated, healing mental capabilities beyond either parent species. Derek processed this information. Is that why? You're allowing me to attempt the rite instead of just having me removed. The ambassador's expression remained impassive, but something shifted in his eyes, partially, but also because my daughter has never defied me so completely before. Such determination, a trait I had not believed she possessed. She's stronger than you know, Derek said. Perhaps the ambassador studied him, or perhaps you bring out qualities in her that I failed to nurture. He straightened. Rest now. Tomorrow will test you beyond anything. Your military training has prepared you for a dawn. Broke over Araxis with brutal clarity. Derek stood in traditional Telani ceremonial attire, lightweight fabric that offered little protection at the edge of an ancient arena carved into the desert. Rock Kira approached, her own formal robes flowing around her. The first trial tests the mind, she explained hurriedly. You'll face illusions designed to break your concentration. Remember, no matter what you see, it isn't real. I faced combat hallucinations before, Derek assured her. Not like these, she warned, squeezing his hand before joining her father in the observers' gallery. The trial began without fanfare. One moment Derek stood alone in the arena. The next he was surrounded by swirling mist that solidified into his worst memories. The ambush that killed his squad, each death playing out in excruciating detail. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself to move forward through the apparitions. New illusions formed Kira, rejecting him, their child-dying futures too painful to contemplate. Each step became harder, the visions more convincing. Then he remembered Kira's words from their night together. Humans feel everything we've taught ourselves to suppress. His emotions weren't weakness. They were strength. Instead of fighting the illusions, he acknowledged them, accepted the pain they represented, and kept moving. When he reached the center of the arena, the mist dissipated. First trial complete, announced an elder. The physical trial followed immediately. A combat challenge against 3 Tani warriors. Derek's military training served him well, but Tani were naturally stronger. He took punishing blows, adapting his strategy to use their strength against them. When the last opponent fell, Derek remained standing, bloodied but unbowed. The final trial spirit proved the most difficult. Derek was led to a chamber containing a single pedestal with a glowing orb. Place your hands upon it, instructed the elder. It will judge your deepest intentions. As Derek touched the orb, his consciousness expanded. He felt Kira's presence, their unborn child's mind, and something else, a profound connection to something greater than himself. The orb pulsed with light, then settled into a steady glow. It is done, the elder announced, surprise evident in his voice. Outside the assembled Telani and Araxians waited in silence. When Derek emerged, bruised but standing tall, a murmur ran through the crowd. Ambassador Tani stepped forward. The human has completed the rite of valor, he declared formally. The bond between Commander Derek Frost and my daughter Kira Tani is recognized under ancient law. Prefect nodded in acknowledgement. These son sullen, but resigned beside him. Kira broke protocol, rushing to Derek and embracing him fiercely. You impossible, stubborn human, she whispered. I've never been so proud to be wrong about someone. Derek laughed, wincing at the pain in his ribs. I did warn Yao about those cacti. Later, in the privacy of their assigned quarters, Kira tended his wounds with gentle hands. My father has arranged for your reinstatement in the Alliance military, she told him. With a promotion no less, it seems you've impressed. More than just me. And us? Derek asked, catching her hand. What happens now? Kira smiled, guiding his palm to her growing abdomen. Now we create our own path. Tani tradition and human adaptability. Our child will have the best of both worlds. I still can't believe. All this started because you were too stubborn to wear a protective suit, Derek marveled. Perhaps the universe knew what it was doing, Kira replied thoughtfully. Sometimes the most painful lessons led to the greatest joys. Derek pulled her close, marveling at how a simple transport mission had transformed into the beginning of a new life, one he'd never imagined but now couldn't live without. So he murmured against her silver hair. Was ignoring my advice worth the price you paid? Kira's amber eyes Methus filled with love and mischief. Absolutely, she declared, sealing Harenswa with a kiss that promised a lifetime of adventure.